Hey everyone, good afternoon. This is Tom Schwab with Interview Valet, and I get asked a lot of questions from people, and often I have to turn to my network on that. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is either who's your coach or can you help me coach? And I'm like, you don't want me to coach you. You want a great coach, somebody that I highly recommend for not only what he has helped us do with our company, but for me personally, what he has brought to the table. It's unlike anything I'd seen before this and anything coaching before this. And also, I got to say, he has spoken more truth into my life than I think about anyone else. So, and it was always truth with love. Todd, welcome.
Absolutely, Tom. It's always truth with love. My goal as your coach is to help you create the best life by design for you, your family, and your company. So thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, and thank you. And I always put that asterisk there because I don't know if I say you're my coach, is that a business expense or is that a personal expense? But I love how you've always told me and the team that you're Interview Valet's coach, right? You're here to take care of the baby, and the baby being the company, not me.
Well, it's interesting, and that's an interesting point. I always try to make sure I'm very clear on the upfront with anybody that I work with. Is my job is to be the voice for the business, because a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was this entrepreneur, would get very much wrapped up in, well, I need this, or I want to achieve that, or a lot of I statements. And by coming in as the coach, one of the things I always have my leaders do is I have my leaders speak last. By having the leaders speak last, that means the best ideas in the room are shared from everywhere, from everyone. And the leader can then maybe pick a better idea than theirs or throw their idea into the conversation. The purpose is to avoid the staff and the other leaders in the room always acquiescing and giving into what the entrepreneur or the CEO wants. Because sometimes what they want is in direct opposite of what the business needs. And I really argue that a lot of entrepreneurs love being the chief firefighter. They love putting out those fires. What they often need their team or their coach to point out is, yeah, I see you love putting out those fires, but you got to remember, you're also the chief arsonist.
Well, I can think of so many stories. That first time we did a quarterly leadership meeting and we had a pre-meeting for that. And you told me, you speak last. And if you don't, I'm going to kick you in the shins. Because my, you knew me, right? My usual thing is that, oh, I got the answer. I've got the answer. And the leadership team at that time was more than happy to keep their mouth shut and do or agree with whatever I said, even if they didn't believe in it or if they wouldn't buy into it. So that was such an important principle that you taught me of you chose these people, you hired them for a reason, get their input, get their answers. And that you gave me permission that I didn't have to be the sage that had every answer and knew every problem or knew the answer to every problem.
Because I used to be just like that. I used to be just like you. And I used to call myself the Oracle. And I felt like my job is to have all the answers to all the problems all the time for everyone. And what that did for me is it fired up my imposter syndrome. And it fired up my itty bitty shitty committee in my head. And that almost sank my business. As you know, Tom, I got my main business, Diversified Industrial Staffing, in 2006. I was $600,000 in debt. I was 2 months away from running out of all of my money, including my house, losing my house, which my son and I lived in. I was a single parent at the time. And it was because my imposter syndrome was screaming at me about, well, the business is doing awful. You must be an awful leader. The business is underperforming. You're an underperforming leader. And it was all that negative talk in my head. So the way I had to learn to deal with it is the same thing that I teach clients like you is I have to learn that I don't have to have all the answers to all the problems all the time. Even in tough times like COVID, I'm coaching my clients constantly. If you don't know the answer to something, that's okay. Nothing wrong with telling your team that we will get through these tough times. We'll pivot into opportunities. I don't know what those are going to be yet, but my intentional thought process and my intentional behavior behind that thought process is to get us out of these times. Just bear with me, stay with me. We're going to survive to thrive another day.
And I love that you have actually done it and have done it through the hard times. There's so many coaches out there that are theoretical, right? They've never done it, but they read some books and they can put it in there. And to go back, give some of the backstory here. You came on to us. I met you through John Rulin, who introduced you to us. You were a client, and I was listening to your podcast interviews. And originally, it was just to give you feedback on the interviews. I was listening from the content. It's like, this guy understands me. And I can still remember we both live in Michigan, about 2 hours away. And I said, I want to meet him. So I was in the Detroit area and said, hey, let's get together for lunch. And I will never forget that Mediterranean restaurant when you asked me the ugly questions about profitability. And I threw out a number, and you just about, I think you chuckled when I threw out the number. And then I threw out this thing that said, but it's okay, because once we grow and once we hit this certain level of virtual or of critical mass, then it will get better. That's when you almost spit out your drink laughing. And you said, that's the lie that every business owner tells themselves. It's the lie that I told myself. And then you said also, when your profitability ends in a 0 or a 5, or you don't know it down to the decimal point, you just made up that number, didn't you? And I'm like, yes.
Well, that's the challenging part. So I hired my first coach in 2006 when my business was in a poor shape. And he taught me a lot of things, same things that you and I were talking about. And he had run a $550 million company. He had been there, done that, survived that. And so many people getting into the coaching space right now are very well-intentioned people, and they can often teach like a great process. I mean, EOS is a great process. Scaling up in Gazelles is a great process. And there are coaches that do that, and they do a phenomenal job. And there's nothing wrong with hiring a coach if you just need a process. My coaching comes from experience of being a CEO. My coaching comes from having been there, done that, recently retired from my business, and being an active CEO in the business so that I can speak from experience. I know what it's like to almost miss payroll. I know what it's like to almost go bankrupt. I know what it's like to have to call my coach and not do what I said I was going to do. Part of my program, and you know this better than most, is my job is to hold my clients massively accountable to what they say they want. They decide what they want. My job is to hold them accountable, and they have all the power in the relationship, believe it or not, because they can change at any time what they want to move into, what they want to pivot into. So if they want to grow their business to $100 million and they reach 20 million, they're like, this is enough. I want to tweak my profitability, and what I want is my time and my freedom and flexibility back. We can pivot into that. And let's talk about how to do this. A great friend of mine who's actually, I think, a client of yours, Tom, Nigel Bennett, tells the stories of how his coach helped him figure out how to take an entire year off of his business while increasing its revenue, increasing its profitability, and taking his family to 17 different countries in 12 months. So coaches, I think, help people see opportunities, see possibilities, remove bottlenecks in the self-talk that they're giving themselves, and help them create processes and accountabilities, not only for the leader, but for the team of the leader, so they can really create a life by design. At least that's my intention.
Well, and I love your process because, the books that you talked about, EOS, I've read that book, right? Rockefeller Habits. I've read that book. I read all the books. I understand, I guess, in my mind, all those different things, but applying them is so much different. And it's so much more than just, hey, just follow these things. It's the mindset. It's identifying what you want, the accountability, but also the cheerleading, right? With that. And I wanted to thank you because, we've increased our profitability, we've increased our sales, but I've also increased my happiness with this. I'm a happier person. And, anybody that's an entrepreneur, a business owner, it's a roller coaster. And to have somebody to turn to on the tops, right, to celebrate, but also on the bottom, to realize that, no, it's not as low as you thought. It wasn't all you when it was at the top, and it wasn't all you at the bottom either. And so can we jump into
it's a great perspective. Oh, so for going to your point of the example, Tom, is when you tell me those things about the highs and the lows, my perspective is a 10,000 foot perspective. I can see down on what you're struggling with, what you're going through and what you're doing, where you're in the weeds of it, or a lot of the other leaders I deal with that are in the weeds. And sometimes the biggest questions I ask them is, going back to implementing, EOS is a great process and it's designed to be implemented by the company. You don't always need to bring in an implementer. My biggest question with my clients who use EOS is, why didn't you do it already? If you've read the book, you see the process, it's a very easy process to implement. It's a very difficult process to follow. It's a very difficult process to hold your key employees attached to their KPIs. What are the rocks? What are the things holding them back? And a lot of times it's the bottleneck of every organization I've ever worked with, including mine when I ran it. The bottleneck is at the top. It's the leader who's allowing things to occur, who's not holding others accountable, not holding themselves accountable to the life they want. I mean, I love chatting with you before we got on the call today. You spent some time on a Friday with your family already today. That's awesome. It's a work-life integration for entrepreneurship. It's never work-life balance.
And the work-life integration and being happy at every point, right? We've gone through a whole lot of struggles. We've had a lot of talks here over these last few months. And I love the perspective you bring to that, right? Because yeah, you did it in the last recession in 2008. You saw it in 9/11, all these other things. So you bring that perspective that I think is so helpful, where you start looking at the opportunities. We've had more talks about opportunities than problems. Can you talk about what, I can't imagine where our business would be right now if it wasn't strong going in to what we're seeing now. And now we can do that. But how are you helping companies now in these challenging times? Because, in February, everybody was a genius, right? Everybody's a genius in a bull market. And then all of a sudden the bear market hits and you find out that you need some help. So what are you seeing on people need the help with these days?
Well, I think it's a great question. And you guys were incredibly well positioned to be nearly as recession proof as just about anybody I work with, because of how you as the leader have stepped up. You as leader put proper processes in place and put the proper people in the seats to lead the organization on a minute by minute basis. So to your credit, that's why I think partially why you were so ready to pivot for these tough times, because a lot of leaders weren't ready to pivot. And a lot of leaders weren't ready to pivot because they were wrapped up dealing with, I work with a lot of family-owned companies. So you're keeping employees or you're keeping family members who may be underperforming. Other leaders are very, very reluctant to have those tough, critical conversations with that leader who maybe needs to be moved on to another job. And someone listening to this today may say, well, can't you coach up people? Do you always have to fire people? I think every situation is uniquely different. There are people who can be coached up, but there are also people who need to be moved on to other companies. And during that process of coming through these tough times with COVID, two of the words that I'm hearing leaders struggle with the most are change and uncertainty. And how are we able to work with that? How are we able to deal with the change created? Because in 2008, when I dealt with the recession, that was a change that was, we had a common enemy. It was, business. It was Wall Street. We, as any entrepreneur will tell you, we had someone to point a finger at. During COVID, we have nobody to point a finger. We all have a common problem without the common enemy. So a lot of the work I'm doing is talking with leaders and getting them to pivot out of their mindset of, I should have seen this coming, or I'm a victim to this, or I'm getting, the drama triangle of I'm a victim or I'm a villain in this processes. Getting them unstuck is the biggest thing I spent my time with. I've talked with leaders from Brazil, from India, from Cape Town, South Africa, from around the United States and around Canada, doing kind of a volunteer tour to work with CEOs who are really stuck around what do I do next, and beating themselves up because they don't have the immediate answer. So a coach can come in and free up that mindset to get them pivoted into new possibilities. Because actually, we've talked about this, within every tragedy, there will be opportunities. Sometimes it's the coach's job to pull you above the fray so you can see where those opportunities and where those pathways to success can be.
Yeah, I think sometimes we've talked about how fast can you go from funk to functional, right? Because I don't have a week where I can just be down about something, right? My family needs me, the market needs me, the company needs me. So having somebody to go to talk about that and see what the opportunities are. And, heck, I met Admiral Stockdale when I was at the Naval Academy, but you were the one that reminded me of the Stockdale paradigm. And Boy, that was so important. Come what, March? Can you unpack that a little bit for
Sure.
everybody, just like you did for me?
Yeah, the Stockdale Paradox is in the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, probably my all-time favorite business book. And he talks about dealing with the brutal reality. And the brutal reality is we have COVID. That's the brutal reality. We all are experiencing it. Where is the opportunity to be able to get through it? In the belief system that somehow, some way, come hell or high water, I'm going to get through this. And it's a combination of dealing with what's right in front of you and having that optimistic thought process without the deadline attached to it. That's how I talk to people about it, so that they're able to get through those tough times. Because like you said, no one saw this coming, and the coach's job is to really help you figure out where can you go and how can I be there for you. My coaching program has changed significantly during COVID. I used to talk to my clients twice a month. Now I'm talking to my clients once a week. I offer concierge service. That's what I call it, where my clients text me. If I've got time, I jump on a call with them right now, because my job is to be for them in the moment when they're in pain, when they're in fight or flight, when they're in stress, or even, I love it. You're one of those who go like, hey, I have this great thing that happened. Can I call? Can we celebrate for 10 minutes? As a coach, that's what I love, because it's the light bulb moments. It's the aha moments. It's pulling away that cloud of the negativity, the cloud of I don't see the opportunity, and then to be able to help you get unstuck, to get you back on track where you want to go, to give you some critical advice if needed. But 99% of the work that I do for my clients is to actively listen, to mirror back what I'm hearing, to provide counsel when necessary. But 99% of my clients already know the answer. They just want to run it past me. They want third-party validation a lot of the times, or maybe a tweak if they're going down this direction. How do I move that direction 5 degrees to get you on even a more successful path?
And let's talk about that for a second, because I've seen a lot of coaches and where it's like, it sounds like a weekly or a bi-weekly therapy session, right? Talk about the same things over and over. And I think one of the things that I really like is that we have the check-in sheets, right? And before our calls, I've got to fill out those, and they're always the same questions. What's not working? What are you most proud of last week? How can I help you? All of those things, and I love that because it forces me to look back, also forces me to look forward and be reflective on it, not just reactionary. So yeah. I really appreciate that. But then, I can't think of the number of coaches that I know that have never really met their clients in real life. And, every quarter we get together with the leadership team and sit down. And while last time we had to do it virtually because of all that was in the world, those are some of the most productive days of my year, just to sit down. And I always say that you hold us in that uncomfortable place, but don't leave us there, right? Because our team is such that we're not big into conflict, right? Mm-hmm. But you make sure that we come, us, but you make sure that we come to the answer before we leave that.
Well, the first thing I do is I really press you to come prepared for the conversation. Come prepared for our weekly conversations. Come prepared for our quarterly conversations. Have the leadership team prepared. Think about what you want to talk about. Time is finite. It is non-renewable. Let's not waste it. And if that requires us to lean into uncomfortable conversations, either between myself and the leader, the CEO, the entrepreneur, or even members of the leadership team, the overall goal is to leave that room, to leave that conversation in a better place than we came in. And the last thing, my style is, I just cannot tolerate or accept artificial harmony. We're all not going to walk around patting everybody on the back, telling us how great we did because we almost hit our goals. If we didn't hit our goals, why didn't we hit our goals? And if we hit our goals, then what can we do to create new goals? Do we want to create stretch goals? What do we want to achieve? Again, during the COVID times, a lot of my clients have pivoted their definition of success from growth to survive, and that's very highly encourage them to do that. But for companies like your company, Interview of LA, there's no reason you can't be growing during these tough times. Maybe the growth will be decelerated. Maybe it won't be as intense, but let's also measure what success looks like to you. Yeah, revenue growth is awesome, but have you automated any processes? Have you improved a hiring process, for example? Have you outsourced some of these other non-revenue generating pieces? Let's talk about why we're here, because ultimately the businesses have to be profitable. And for the businesses to be profitable, sometimes we have to have challenging conversations in the room or on the calls to get people unstuck about why they're making the choices they're making. Why are they making the decisions that they're implementing? Because the decisions that businesses have plateaus, and what worked for you when you were just starting off and what works for you when you're $1 million company are rarely the same. Sometimes the processes need to change. The leadership mindset needs to change. We have to redefine what success looks like. And a lot of times the biggest challenge I have as a coach is for getting the CEO, startup entrepreneur to be comfortable to delegate and then hold accountable the team. Because, and I was this guy, we're rugged individualists. We're used to doing everything ourselves when we just start up in the beginning. Well, as we grow our team, our skill sets have to shift and evolve so that we can then train others, empower others, and hold them accountable. And when they make it happen, we celebrate their successes. When they stumble and fall, we're there to pick them back up. And if they're struggling and we're able to give them some teachable moments, we then take advantage of those opportunities. So it really does shift and change during your entire entrepreneurial journey.
Well, and the impact that you've had on me and the entire company, right? Because what you have taught me, I've taught Jamie and Tommy and the leadership team, and I can see that starting to roll down into their teams. And I think that's so important that you've been there, done that, and have that viewpoint from it. So you've got the academic side of it, but you've also got that you've done it and you've helped many other people do it, either through EO, and you've got that perspective. And I think that's important because, the Naval Academy is a leadership university, right? I saw it in the corporate world, but I had never done it in the small business world, or especially the small business world like we are today, where there's so much stress.
Well, the crazy thing is too, I still have a coach. So I coach and I have a coach. Now, the coach I had in 06, from 06 to 2006 to 2012, give or take, that was very much a business coach who worked on my mindset to get me unstuck. The coach I've had for the last 7 years is a neurosurgeon. He's a mindset expert. He's literally part of the Conscious Capitalism Board. I mean, this guy is amazing. And he teaches me, because as the coach of people like you, Tom, I have to come to you with new information. I feel it's my responsibility to be on the cutting edge of as much as I possibly can. I just can't rest on my laurels that, my business went from being $600,000 in debt to being on the Inc. 5000 as one of the fastest growing companies in America 6 times. I can't that's not the back of my baseball card, so to speak. I have to be continuing to drive forward with my knowledge acquisition. I go to MIT every year to a program called Gathering of Titans. It's 80 CEOs from around the globe where we bring in other experts and other people to teach us. Being an entrepreneur is a lifelong learning experience for someone like me. And I pass it on to my clients. And the best clients I work with are guys like you, Tom, who have a bookshelves of books that they've actually read. So that's I think so key when you're trying to pick a coach, is to find somebody who's passionate about learning and growing and evolving. And one of the always tell people when they're vetting for coaches, hey, I still have a coach. If you want to talk to my guy, he'll tell you all the things that we're working on for me and my other clients.
And I think that's so important too. It's like, you got to find the right coach, right?
Oh, it's like falling in love.
Right. It's like, I don't need a coach, I need the coach. And that's why I always say, if people will come to me and say, can I get a referral to your coach? I don't know that you would be a good fit, right? But the ones that are, I am great. And often it's not the people saying, hey, I need a coach, but the ones that are struggling with it. My biggest, I needed you a couple of years before, but I got in my own way there. So what would you say to somebody that is struggling, right? Well, I'll get a coach when I get to this level, or as soon as I get this done, then I'll get a coach, or I can't afford a coach right now. I would imagine those are things that you're hearing. And what's your response to that?
You got to be ready. You've got to be ready. Being ready is different for every other person. It's all individualistic. So for me, I had to hit bottom of being on the doorsteps of bankruptcy for me to make a change. Working with a coach is going to cause you to evolve and change. Working with a coach is going to cause you to show up differently as a leader in your company, but also the leader of your life. You will be different at home. You'll be a different father or mother. You'll be a different parent, and you'll be a different CEO. There's no way around it, because if you're not different, then you've hired the wrong coach. That's been my philosophy and experiences. And as you're vetting and picking a coach, you want to find someone who's going to work with you where you are right now. My coaching program beneath the surface is very much the same. How I show up for my 10 clients is I show up 10 different ways depending on where each of them are in the moment. And that's so important, because I can't be showing up for Tom one way and showing up for someone else the exact same way. It doesn't work, because where Tom is today is different than where he was when we first started working together. And I always say, like, I had talked with someone yesterday, I'm not sure I'm a great coach for him. And so what I challenged him, that the first thing I did is I gave him some homework, because I need to see if he's going to do the homework I gave him. If he does the homework that I gave him, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It's matter that he does it, because to work with a coach to change your business requires you to change yourself. And because this person is very much a problem avoider, he's a people avoider, he's a very charismatic guy, but not somebody who gets things done. The first thing, as his potential coach, I need to see is he going to get this done? And if he doesn't do the homework and he still wants to engage me, I would probably pass on that opportunity, because I'm not a good coach for him, because I love to watch my clients have massive change in their lives, massive change in their business, massive change in what they want to accomplish. I'm not just in it for the paycheck.
Yeah, I remember one of your early interviews, you were talking about getting stuff done. And that's what it is. If you're interested in getting stuff done, Todd's the guy for you. And the other thing with that too is that I've always respected the confidentiality that you've had. I know you've got 10 other clients, 9 other clients, whatever it is. I've never felt like I was just one of the 10. Like you said, the accessibility there. And also, you've never really mentioned other clients. I know you have them, but you don't talk about other people's business. And I hear so many people do that. And I know that I can say anything and it's confidential. When we have our quarterly meetings, whatever said there stays that. It's a true confidant. And it's never, well, you never come back with, well, I think you should do that. You lead me to the decision that we can buy into. And, that's the difference between a coach and a consultant.
Well,
and
as a coach, my number one thing is to maintain the trust with you. And the easiest way for me to break that trust is to break your confidentiality. And I learned that from EO. I've been in EO, going on 17, 18 years now. And what's said, I call it Fight Club. What's said in the room stays in the room. And that's it. It's a non-negotiable. And so you've been so generous today, and by inviting me to be on your show. So you're kind of opening the curtain for me to walk out and say, yes, I'm Tom Schwab's coach. But unless somebody wants a reference from somebody, nobody's going to find out who my clients are, because your confidentiality, your anonymity is something I value to the death. Now, I've had people said, hey, can I get a referral to one of your clients? I want to hear what it's like to work with you. Absolutely. And I would call you and say, hey, would you mind? Bob Smith's going to give you a call. Would you be willing to talk to him about our relationship? And that's up to you. It's so important. It's somewhere, being a coach is somewhere between being a therapist, a business strategist, and a clergy. Because I hear things from my clients that, oh my gosh, I've got clients who have struggles in their business. I've got clients who have struggles in their parenting. I have clients who have struggles in their partnerships with their relationships. And here's the reality, though. I want to hear those things, because I'm a big believer that wherever you go, there you are. So wherever you are as Tom Schwab, the entrepreneur, well, you're going to bring that into your home life. And wherever you bring your home life, you're going to bring that into your business. It never stops. And it's for me, that was the same situation. I knew my coach was so wise. He's like, wherever you go, you're going to be an entrepreneur. So let's deal with you as a holistic being, not just your business piece. Fixing the business is easy. It's really simple. To be a great CEO, you only have to do 2 things: remove bottlenecks in the business, and you have to make it easy. Make it easy for your people to work for you, and make it easy for your clients to work with you. You just do those things, you're going to be super successful. The coach tells you, why aren't you removing the bottlenecks? Why aren't you making it easy for your employees? Why aren't you making it easy? Why aren't you making it easy for your customers? Because it's all up here.
Well, it's like golf. Golf is a very simple game, right? Hit the ball straight. It's simple doesn't mean it's easy. And
Yes.
from
Yes.
your standpoint, you look at it and you can, from the outsider's perspective, give that frame that it makes it look easier. So, as we wrap up here, I wanted to ask how people can get in touch with you, but I wanted to just do a plea. If anybody's listening to this, and you're struggling, right? I've been there. There's that the shame of, oh, I should have gotten this finished. Well, I will. I'll do this. Well, if you haven't done it up to this point, what's more time going to do? And the other thing too is we don't have time. You had said something before, Todd. Time that energy is, or time is, one of those finite resources. There's Toddisms that are like all over my computer here that always safeguard your time and energy, and time and energy in your mindset, right? Those are the things that you can't get back. So if that's you, if you're struggling with it, find somebody that you can work with. Find somebody that you can help. We're wired differently, right? People that sign the back of the paycheck think differently than people that sign the front of the paycheck. And find somebody that you can trust, that you can go along with. It will not only help your business, it will help your life. It'll help your employees, and heck, you'll have a whole lot more fun with it. So that's my ploy to get help. Find somebody like Todd. Find somebody that's going to really work with you. And Todd, how can people get in touch with you if you're like, man, I like this guy?
Well, Tom, first of all, thank you so much for giving me the absolute privilege to be here today. I do believe time is finite, and how we choose to spend our time says a lot about us. And the fact that you chose to have me on the show today, it just speaks volumes to the wonderful human being that I find you to be. And I'm very grateful. I would say to anybody who sees this, whether it's today or 5 years from now, you can reach out to me on my website, todd@extraordinaryadvisors.com. And I'm happy to book a free 30-minute conversation with you. We can talk about imposter syndrome. We can talk about your business. We can talk about being stuck. We can talk about how you're showing up. Are you the chief firefighter? And oh gosh, now you realize you're the chief arsonist. And how do you deal with that polarity? Because I really think that it's so important, because I struggled so hard to raise my hand and ask for help. That's why I do what I do. The coaching I do now is really my opportunity to pay back all the coaches I've had in my life, both the compensated and uncompensated, the coaches, the mentors, the influencers who've been invaluable to me. So again, Tom, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm super grateful for you as my client, but I'm just as grateful, even more grateful, for having you as my friend. Thanks so much for having me today.
Well, thank you, Todd. And once again, what's ordinary to you is amazing to others. We all can't do everything, but we should know people that can help us. That's what radical collaboration is all about. We all win when we work together, when we find great people, great resources that are working in their zone of genius. Todd Palmer is one of those people that I'm glad to have in my life, and I'm super excited to introduce and to recommend to you. Until next week.